Give me a minute and let's talk about the battlefront, which I haven't done in a long time because there's been nothing changing on the front line, right? The front line has been very static with the exception of the loss of Avdiivka. And that's for months now. 5 months, 6 months maybe. But things are changing. Things are about to change. Now let's take a look. Over here, right, is the main front line. And you see it extending all the way up there in the Kharkiv Oblast of Ukraine, all the way down to Zaporizhia. And then where you see these huge troop concentrations, that's Donetsk, right? And that's where the breakthrough of Avdiivka happened. That's where even now there is a breakthrough of the first line of Ukrainian defenses, a breach in the first line of defenses that the Russians are trying to exploit to get to Chasiv Yar. And then we've just had news from the ISW. According to the Institute for the Study of War, the Manhattan-based think tank, the Russians have increased troop concentrations in the Belgorod Oblast, Kursk Oblast, and Bryansk Oblast, which is way over here, right on the border with Ukraine. Back here is Sumy, which is a large city that's been taking a pounding from Russian artillery over the border. Well, what have we heard about these oblasts of Russia? According to preliminary reports, the Russians have put 50,000 troops into these three oblasts. Now, that's all we know. And it's important to recognize that at the time that the Russian Freedom Legion moved into the Kursk and Belgorod oblasts, we had good evidence to indicate that there were about 11,000 regular troops in Belgorod. So about 11,000. Now, if they've moved 50,000 into these three oblasts, well, that's only an average of about 17,000 per oblast. It is not some overwhelming force. It might sound like a lot on the surface, and I'm not trying to minimize it, but remember, the Ukrainians only have something like 40,000 men all along their 1,000-mile-long northern border. So what does this mean if there's suddenly 34,000 men right here that could potentially try to pour across the line? Well, it probably means that you're going to move troops from down here where they all are. What the Institute for the Study of War seems to be suggesting is that the Russians have made these troop concentrations up here in Bryansk and Kursk and Belgorod not so much to win some large offensive across the border, but rather to fix Ukrainian troops along that northern border and maybe pull some reserves from down near Chasiv Yar in Donetsk, where the Russians will actually launch the real counteroffensive. So this whole thing up here may be a feint, just an effort not so much to secure Kharkiv or to pour over the border, but just to fix Ukrainian troops in place to allow for an exploitation of the breakthrough that they've had west of Avdiivka. Now, we don't know what's going to happen here, but we do know that there's suddenly 50,000 troops up here, and that the Russians are pushing hard to exploit that breach in the first line of Ukrainian defenses on the way to Chasiv Yar. The next few weeks are the hard time. The time where the Ukrainians can maybe, get into their stores because they know that more Western weapons are coming, but aren't here yet. And so we may see more artillery fire, more HIMARS strikes, more glided bombs, etc., coming from the Ukrainians. As a matter of fact, there's some evidence of that down in Kherson, but I'll do that separately. I'll treat that separately. So this looks like the way things are shaping up for the next few weeks. The Russians are moving lots of men in, either to come across the border and try to take Kharkiv city or the Kharkiv Oblast, or a generalized push across the border, which seems absolutely insane when one thinks about how that border has been mined. And and it doesn't look like they have enough men for it, or it's a feint and they're trying to fix Ukrainian troops along the border so that they can make the real breakout down here in Donetsk. That seems to be what's happening. I want to thank Jack B., who is the sponsor of this video. Jack joined the Patreon at the $30 a month level, and so every month I give him my personal thanks and a shout out and a video sponsorship. If you would like one too, join the Patreon. The link is in the bio. Thanks.